The near extinction of the North American bison in the late 19th century, an event that unfolded in barely more than a decade, triggered immediate and long-lasting economic and social consequences for the indigenous nations that had relied on the animal for millennia. Our research shows that the destruction of the bison economy not only caused sharp declines in well-being at the time, but also set formerly bison-reliant nations on a permanently lower development trajectory. Before the slaughter, these nations were among the tallest populations in the world, a biological marker of high living standards. Yet individuals born after the bison's disappearance lost this height advantage entirely. By the early 20th century, child mortality in bison nations was 16 percentage points higher, and adults were 29.7 percentage points less likely to report an occupation, compared with nations that had never depended on the bison. These disparities persisted. Throughout the late 20th century and into the present, per capita income in bison nations has remained on average 28% lower. These long-run gaps cannot be explained by differences in agricultural potential, governance structures, or the implementation of the Dawes Act. Instead, we argue that the sudden collapse of the bison economy, combined with limited access to credit, fundamentally altered the development path of these nations. Credit constraints hindered their ability to adapt, whether through occupational respecialization or migration. Prior to European settlement, between 10 and 30 million bison roamed the region stretching from the Appalachians to the Rockies, and from northern Mexico to the Canadian prairies. For at least 10,000 years, many indigenous nations in this region relied on the bison, not only for food, but also for clothing, shelter, tools, and trade goods. The animal's abundance and the ability to preserve meat for years made these societies among the most prosperous in North America. The introduction of the horse in the 17th century transformed bison hunting, lowering its costs and encouraging some groups to shift away from agriculture, but it also brought European diseases into the plains. As white settlement expanded westward, bison populations declined gradually, until the completion of the Union Pacific Railroad in 1869 opened the herds to commercial hide hunters. A breakthrough in European tanning techniques in 1871 created a sudden, massive demand for bison hides, and the slaughter accelerated dramatically. By 1879, the southern herd had been wiped out. By 1883, the species was nearly extinct. Although treaties had guaranteed indigenous hunting rights and promised protection of the herds, these agreements were not enforced. In fact, U.S. military leaders openly encouraged the extermination of the bison as a strategy to force native nations onto reservations. As the herds vanished, indigenous communities faced starvation, with reports of widespread hunger, malnutrition, and desperate attempts to survive on horses, mules, spoiled food, and even old clothing. Opportunities for economic adjustment were severely limited. Movement off reservations required permission from Indian agents, and meaningful freedom of mobility did not arrive until the mid-20th century. Entry into cattle ranching, an occupation that might have matched existing skills, was often blocked by agents or constrained by lack of credit. Government policy overwhelmingly pushed agriculture, despite its cultural mismatch and the limited historical experience of many plains nations. To measure the effects of this shock, we combine anthropometric data collected by Franz Boas between 1888 and 1903 with early 20th century census data and modern income measures. Using a difference in differences approach, we find that individuals from bison-reliant nations born after the slaughter were, on average, 2.5 centimeters shorter than those from nations that had never depended on the bison. Additional indicators, child mortality, fertility patterns, sex ratios, and occupational outcomes, confirm the severe and lasting decline in well-being. Tracing these outcomes into the 21st century, we show that the economic divergence between bison and non-bison nations has persisted. The key mechanism is access to credit. Nations with better credit availability in the 1870s were more likely to shift into capital-intensive industries, and less likely to rely on agriculture, leading to greater income convergence over time. The destruction of the bison economy stands as one of the most rapid collapses of a major industry in North American history. Its consequences mirror those of other sudden economic shocks, such as the decline of coal and steel in the 1980s, or the collapse of the Atlantic cod fishery in the 1990s, but with far deeper and more persistent effects. Our findings highlight how historical shocks can shape regional development for generations, especially when financial institutions fail to support adaptation. This work also challenges narratives that attribute North American prosperity solely to European settlement and institution building. Indigenous societies possessed their own complex institutions and thriving economies which were systematically undermined. The long-term poverty observed today among many Plains nations is not a historical inevitability but the result of a profound and abrupt economic destruction whose effects continue to reverberate.